Hi everyone, it's Taylor. A little bit of background about me if you've never seen my face before. I am a current junior at the University of Washington studying molecular, cellular, and developmental biology on the Premed track. As of last quarter, I've officially finished all of my Premed prerequisites to get into medical school. So I finally have grounds to talk about all of them to you guys, and I thought that a fun way to do that would be to rank all of them in a tier list. And a little bit of background about UW, if you're watching this and you go to a different university, UW, not just pre-med, but a lot of other majors as well, have what we call weed out courses, and essentially they serve to weed out all of kind of like the weaker students, as bad as that sounds, progressively through each class, and they do so by setting the average to like a 2.6 or a 2.8 or something kind of low, and then make the passing grade pretty low still, but high enough that there's students that don't get into the next course in the series. And most of the pre-med courses are weed out courses. So yeah, they were not fun to go through. Okay, I can't even say that. Some of them were fun, but I feel like they were definitely difficult. And now that I've finished, I can rank them. But yeah, I guess let's just get on into it. I don't have too much more to say. So the way I'm gonna do this is I have everything set up on my laptop so that it screen records the what do you even call this? Like the tier list, there we go. I'm really technologically inept, so this is quite the step up for me in my YouTube videos, but I have that, and then I have some notes, and I'm just going to go through my classes in the order that I took them and give you kind of like a spiel on them. And I don't have anything written down as to what I'm gonna say. I'm gonna talk to you guys like you guys are my friends and just go through my genuine thoughts on how I felt about each class. And if you catch me looking this way, that's because my laptop is this way. The first class that I took at UW, and the first class that a lot of pre-meds take in college, is Chem. And I'll give the UW codes for each of the classes as well, in case you're a UW student watching this and you want to know which versions of these classes that I took. So I took Chem 142, 152, and 162. What do I have to say about Chem? I actually did not hate this class. I came into UW and I had heard that all of the pre-med classes were going to be hard, but this was not very difficult for me, especially like relatively to the other ones. Actually, funny story about Chem 142, which is the first one in the series. I signed up for it as an 8:30 class, and now looking back, I realized that was a dumb idea because I'm definitely not a morning person. But back then, I guess my logic was that I got up at 6 o'clock in the morning for high school, and I thought that this was going to be completely fine. Was not fine, especially considering the culture of freshman year. I would stay up super late, and then I would wake up for this class and I would be like half asleep in it every single day without fail. And because of that, it was a little bit rougher, but that quickly, I quickly learned my lesson and I started going to bed earlier for that one. And then for 152 and 162, I signed up for them later. Content-wise, they really weren't hard. The only weird thing about them was that I took 142 and 152 in person and then 162 online, because that was the quarter that chaos ensued and we all got moved online. So lab was a little bit boring for that one, but other than that, like, really wasn't that hard. I feel like this was still when people were trying to get adjusted to UW, and I felt like my high school was pretty rigorous, so I kind of had a little bit of an advantage in that class. So in terms of ranking, and excuse the pictures, I completely thought that I was going to be able to like label what classes they were, but I made it and I realized I couldn't, and then I was too lazy to change it, so I'm just gonna keep the pictures, and then at the end I'll add the titles in like a screenshot or something. But Chem, I believe I picked this image. I am going to put it into this category. Oh, and I completely forgot. I forgot to explain the categories that I made. So the top category is, okay, maybe I'll get into med school, because yeah, pretty self-explanatory. This is like the best category. Survived and kind of thrived, made it through alive, my mental health suffered, and dandelions and Roundup, because Get it? Weed out courses. Haha, it's so funny. I told this joke to somebody, or to like a group of people at UW, and nobody got it until I explained it, and I was quite sad, so I decided to throw it in to this video, and hopefully some of you will understand it. But yeah, okay, back to classes. The next class that I'm going to talk about is calculus, and this is like a soft pre-med requirement, as in like it's not really required, but it's recommended, and then some schools want it, and then some schools are like, it's okay if you don't have it. So I just included it anyway because I took it. I only took math 124 and 125, and the last one in the series was 126, but I did not end up taking it for the reason which I will explain. I took this freshman year concurrently with Chem, and 124 was okay because I'd already come in with AP Calculus experience. The only complaint that I had about 124 was that the professors for some reason didn't like project their work up on a screen and instead wrote it on a chalkboard. And when you have a class of like 200 people and you're sitting in the back, it is like impossible to read. So the lectures weren't insanely helpful, but I don't know, content wasn't like horrible. I had a textbook at my disposal and that class worked out pretty okay. It was 125 that really got me. So the 125 content is integrals, and in high school, this was like at the end of my senior year when we started doing integrals, and this is when I had completely tapped out. I'd already gotten into college and I knew that I wasn't really gonna go into anything math related, so I stopped paying attention and I completely bombed this section of my AP exam. And so I had a very difficult time in 125. For the same reason, the professor didn't really project things very well. Another thing that added to the lectures not being the best environment is I feel like in calculus there's like this notion that everyone kind of follows and knows that the professors are geniuses. They are very brilliant people and their research reflects this, but in terms of being professors, not the most organized, not the best. My 125 professor spent a whole 20 minutes of lecture passing around his orange peel that he perfectly peeled in the shape of an integral to tell us how calculus is everywhere in life. So needless to say, I kind of stopped showing up to lecture, and that's not an excuse. Don't follow that advice, but I just personally felt like lectures weren't that helpful. So yeah, my grade kind of suffered a little bit more in that one, and I decided that because I didn't have to take 126 that I wasn't going to. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in the category that I pre-selected, which was my mental health suffered. It wasn't the worst, but definitely one of my least favorite classes out of the whole bunch. The next class that I took is biology, and if you're a UW student, that would be Bio 180, 200, and 220 to you. I took this series online during my sophomore year, and I felt like, okay, well, one, it was my major, so already, like, I liked the content, and it was really easy. Like, none of the content was anything that was super challenging. It was just a lot of memorizing terms and putting concepts together, and yeah, no, that's pretty self-explanatory there. The only difficult thing about biology that I feel like made it a weed out course was that the tests were graded super strictly. The way they worked was that you had to type up a response to a question and you were trying to use as many keywords as possible, and the graders were actually really harsh, and if you didn't use as concise of language as possible, or if you explain things that could have made sense but it wasn't quite what they were looking for, they would dock points. And so I feel like Bio 180 was difficult for me for this reason, but it got progressively better as I learned what they wanted. And I had a lot of fun in this class because we were able to take our tests in groups because it was online. And so I had a good group of friends that we would like Zoom during our tests, and it was super chill. Obviously, like, still stressful, but comparatively it was super chill. And I loved biology, and because of that, and nicely enough, I selected an image that has the biology word on it. I'm going to put it up here. All right, next class, OChem. This one I also took concurrently with bio in my sophomore year, and for some reason, I decided to take the honors series of OChem, so I took OChem, or Chem 335, 336, and 337. Why I did that, I don't know. Actually, that's a lie. Yes, I do know. I did that because I thought that Gen Chem was fun, and I thought that OChem was going to be the same, and boy was I wrong. This class is all about memorization, but not in the same sense as biology. You spend 335 just kind of like learning terms, learning like how to name molecules. Honestly, at this point, I can't even tell you, but 335 was definitely not the worst class. 336 and 337, on the other hand, were all about memorizing mechanisms, and the tests would consist of having like 2 molecules, one that's like a simpler molecule, one that's like really big, and it would be like, how do you get from molecule A to molecule B using the reactions that we've learned, and they got progressively more complex. And the thing that sucked about the OChem track that I took was that it was a ton of smarty pantses, and not to say that I'm like the dumbest person, at least I hope, and for the sake of my confidence, I really hope that's true, but these people were like extremely intelligent and extremely dedicated to chemistry. They spent a lot of time studying, and if any of you have taken an honors class, you definitely like understand the culture. And honestly, maybe it is that I'm dumb, but I definitely fell like below the curve in this one, and the curve was set a little bit higher than your normal OChem series, but it was still more difficult than I thought it would be to get a good grade. And actually my 336 professor, funnily enough, said that he was so disappointed in our performance on the exams that he was going to lower all of our grades by a certain amount, which was not great. And I definitely had a lot of mental breakdowns in this class. And because of that, and if I can remember, oh yeah, I do remember which image I selected. I'm going to put it in dandelions and Roundup, which, yeah, I was definitely weeded out in that class, so. All right, OChem Lab I took concurrently with OChem, obviously, and it was Chem 346 and 347. This one was actually not as bad as OChem. I took it online, obviously, so we weren't in a lab setting, which kind of was sad, but the upside to that was that we didn't have to spend 3 hours in a lab mixing different reagents and all of that. We were just given the data, and then we could go do whatever we wanted. Not whatever we wanted, we had to do the lab, but for the rest of lab, we had that time to ourselves to actually work on the write-up and all of that fun jazz. This was definitely hard, don't get me wrong. It was way harder than like the labs that you take in like Gen Chem, for example, or biology or physics even. We had 2 labs per week where we had to write write-ups for them, and I definitely got stumped in them. Like, they were not clear cut. I had to go like get help from Clue, which is our tutoring center at UW. And even the Clue tutors were stumped by like the molecules that I was given for experiments. But I felt like the professors and the TAs were super helpful and super encouraging. And even though 346 did not go the best, and I definitely got below on one of my lab reports, 347 was so much better, and I kind of got the hang of it a lot more. And so because of that, and the image that I selected was of somebody in a lab, even though that wasn't me because we were online, I'm going to put it in Made It Through Alive, just because it was difficult, but like way better than regular OChem. Right, and that wraps up sophomore year, so now we're going to go to junior year, the year that I'm in right now. BioChem. I took BioChem 405 and 406 at UW. We have a couple different tracks of BioChem for some reason. We have the one that I took, which is like the bare minimum, like pre-med dental students, nursing, I don't know, what other specialties. Like, if you just need to take it as a requirement, like you take this series, Then there's another series that like BioChem majors take, and then there's the honors series, which would have been a continuation of OChem. I decided that wasn't gonna happen after the mess that OChem was. So BioChem, I thought it was gonna be better because I was dropping down from honors. It was not. It was very similar to OChem in terms of like memorization and memorizing mechanisms, and not as many mechanisms, and obviously not in the same way, but it would be like memorizing what enzymes did, and then like pathways for, I don't know, if insulin like attaches to a receptor, what happens after that, and then like what happens if part of it is defective, like stuff like that. It was very memory intensive, and because this was the first class that I was taking after the COVID era, where we actually had to take tests in person again, I definitely struggled with the memorization part of this class. Yeah, no, I luckily did not cry over this class like I did in OChem, but I definitely struggled and was debating not taking 406 for like a little bit, but I ended up just wanting to get it over with, so I ended up taking it anyway. Spent way too much time just like looking at slides and like redrawing all the enzymes and writing out what their like characteristics were, and that is a part of my life that I will never get back. I do know that I have to take it again in med school, so I'm going to try to enjoy it then, but for now I have the right to complain about it. So BioChem, I chose a picture of an enzyme because enzymes, if like, why is this the model that they use? I don't know, but I'm putting it in my mental health separate because it was definitely not as bad as OChem, but yeah, pretty bad. Wait, I'm actually debating this because it definitely was not as bad as calculus because I had like some experience, but I think I'm still going to leave it in here just because OChem was so bad that I feel like nothing compares. The next class that I'm going to talk about is physics, and at UW I took 114, 115, and 116, which is the algebra-based series. I definitely did not want to tackle the calculus-based series, especially since I didn't love calculus, and because this was all that was needed for med school. Surprisingly enough, I actually really liked physics. I thought that I was gonna hate it because I hated it in high school, but I don't know, like it just clicked for me. I was able to understand, like, I feel like I do a lot better with conceptual stuff. Like if you just hand me a list of things to memorize, I can do it, but I'm going to like do it begrudgingly. But with physics, like you had all the equation sheets on tests, so you never had to memorize them. It was just a matter of being able to figure things out. It was kind of like a puzzle, and I thought that was super fun. And honestly, the content wasn't that bad. The only one that kind of sucked for me personally was 114, which was like kinematics and all of like the physical world stuff. I don't know, there were just a lot of equations there, and that one I got through, but I definitely did not like it as much as 115 and 116. And so ranking wise, I put it down as survived and kind of thrived in my notes, but I'm debating putting it up here just because I actually did not do so horrible in it. Or, okay, that's a lie. I did pretty well in it actually for like UW standards. I think I'm gonna put it up here. I think I liked it as much as biology. Ooh, I feel like my high school self would not believe that it's going up there. Like, okay, high school, this is like a side tangent, but in high school, sophomore year, I remember Dr. Lau was his name. He was like, I think like a PhD professor or something. I could be entirely wrong, but he came and he taught our high school, and he like completely expected us to be able to do more than we actually could. And so our test averages were like 40%. And this is like without a curve like you get in college. So that definitely sucked, and it traumatized me, and I thought that I was gonna hate physics, but again, did not. So that was good news. And the last class that I have that I'm including again is kind of like a soft pre-med requirement because it's like wanted, but it's not like required for the most part. I think some schools do require it, but whatever. I'm including genetics, and the UW code is genome 361. This class I thought was going to be easier than it actually was, because like you learn about like DNA and the central dogma and all of that stuff in like freaking like 5th grade biology, but I thought that it was going to be similar to that, like we're just going to go through like, oh, DNA, like inheritance patterns, blah blah blah, and we definitely did, but it was way harder than that. What do I have to say about this class? I don't even know, it was a whir of a class. The professors were super nice and they explained things well in lecture. We just went into much more difficult content that I thought we would have for DNA stuff. We actually looked a lot deeper into the mechanisms, kind of like BioChem actually. And then we did this whole case study with this one disease, Duchenne's muscular dystrophy, and then we were like learning everything through the lens of DMD, which was kind of cool, but like also kind of sad because we were learning about people with this disorder. But I made it out alive. I ended up with a grade that I'm okay with. And so because of that, and DNA is my picture, I'm going to put it in made it through alive. I really don't have that much to say. It was just like an okay class, like, and I think most people agree on that. It was like difficult, but like it was survivable, and it definitely wasn't as much of a weed out as like other classes, like with grades. And so that's it. That's like all of the classes that I've taken. I'm done, and I'm going to also take a screenshot and at some point put up all the class rankings that I did with like the labels on them, just for reference. If you go to UW and you've taken these classes yourself, let me know if you agree, or even if you don't go to UW and you're a pre-med yourself, I would love to hear what you guys think. If you haven't taken these classes yet and this scares you, please don't let it scare you. It's okay, like I made it out and I ended up with pretty good grades overall, so it's definitely doable and you can do it. It just takes definitely a lot of work. It was kind of sad, like in some of my classes, just having to stay in on weekend nights while my friends went out without me because I was studying for a midterm or something. But everyone has to do it, and it's just a part of the process. But yeah, thank you for watching this video. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and let me know if there are any videos that you want to see next. And with that, bye!